Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of a new series called Twice as Hard. And it would make me so happy to just introduce you to both the Sharon Hurley Hall and Lisa Hurley sisters. They are writers, podcasters, activists, and my first guests for this new series. And I'm really, really happy to be with them today. Sharon,
thank you, Janelle.
Introduce yourselves.
Thank you, Janelle. I am so happy to be here. This is really exciting. As Janelle says, you know, we wear a number of hats, Lisa and I. And let me just get out of the way. Yes, we are really sisters. People always ask about that.
People do ask that.
Yeah, we're not just sisters, we're sisters.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. We seem to have started this journey of activism together. And it's one of the things that really amazed us when we sort of look back on it is that we both ended up as writers, which was not a foregone conclusion, was it, sis?
Not at all. You know, our careers started off very differently. Like you started off in publishing and media, right, sis? And then, and I started off in hotel marketing and hotel management. And somehow, but you know, we were brought up as readers and writers, right? We always were very strong in the language arts, and so I guess you know the river kept traveling in the direction it was meant to travel, and here's where we've landed.
Thank you so much for again joining me. For those who don't know, both sisters have originated from the beautiful island of Barbados. And the island was just recently, I guess, decolonized.
Yes, let's say that.
The last step in decolonization, Barbados became a republic on its 55th anniversary of independence.
Isn't that fantastic?
Oh my gosh, it feels so good. You know, and it's been a long time coming. I've heard of, you know, many people, both Sharon and I posted about it separately, right? And so, of course, there's, you know, Caribbean LinkedIn is a real thing, and of course, all the Caribbean community was celebrating with us. But some of them were also saying, "Well, it's time for some other islands to, you know, start making a move in that direction." Islands and other territories as well, right? Yeah. But it feels fantastic. It feels like, you know, with the panorama and all kinds of all this stuff that's going on, it is a singularly bright spot in this year.
Yeah.
So,
yes,
yeah.
and timely.
It's so timely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Caribbean LinkedIn, because I think that's how we kind of connected, right?
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, Kimberly John Morgan posted something with, you know, where are my Caribbean people at? Drop your favorite soca song here. And all of a sudden we discovered that these people that, you know, we had discovered that a whole bunch of people had a Caribbean connection that we had not even realized. Like one of the things that you and Lisa and I have in common, Janelle, are, you know, our mother's Trinidadian, and we actually spent some time living in Trinidad and going to school in Trinidad as children. So there's another one of those things, like, you know how we Caribbean people are, we get everywhere, right?
Right. But I remember that post distinctly. I want to say it was posted on a Friday, could be wrong, but it certainly felt like if it was posted on a Friday, it was like the end of the day, or end of the week rather. And it just felt like a fete, like a party, like a celebration. And it was just such a sense of community. And like you said, Janelle, even people that we were connected to, we didn't realize necessarily had, you know, the Caribbean tie. And so it was great to find out that, oh, these people that we know and that we vibe with, that we've been communicating with, there are Caribbean, you know, sisters and brothers as well. And it just felt warmer and like just this wonderful sense of community. Just a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I think, you know, if it wasn't for Caribbean LinkedIn and Black LinkedIn, which we know is thriving based on the article that was first written by Ashanti Maya Martin. I think she's going to be a guest on this show as well.
I love her.
Right? Yes. We have this kind of community, and we recognize, you know, this kind of collective struggle, right, in the post-George Floyd era that have kind of carried us through our lives and then connected us together as a community. And so I think it's really important for me to shine a light you know, as somebody who works in this inclusion space and deals particularly with, you know, issues in the workplace, right, to highlight the experiences of Black women and the ways in which we have to work twice as hard as our counterparts throughout the course of our life. So I like the fact that, you know, you touched on your upbringing in Trinidad and Tobago. So let's go there for
yeah. Well, I wanted to say that the in terms of inclusion and how one is perceived as a Black person, Black woman, Black woman from the Caribbean, like, you know, there's this impression out there of what quote unquote the islands are like and island people are like, as though, you know, we're sort of all there swinging from trees, you know, but, you know, JetBlue is a thing and we use it, right?
Got it.
For example, and you would not believe that in this day and age, people still have those kinds of really ignorant beliefs. But definitely in my career, I've found that, you know, I have never tried to get rid of my accent or hide it in any way. So, you know, it's just there is what it is. But it's almost as though people see you as a pet or some kind of curiosity, or they exoticize you, fetishize you in some way.
And can I jump in there, sis, just to say, I mean, you're talking about your experience living and working in the US. I had a similar experience living and working in the UK. This thing is everywhere.
Yeah.
This thing is everywhere. You know, when you talk to people, this idea of what it is to be a Black person, what it is to be a Black woman, what is considered professional, how your accent affects how you're perceived, what qualifications they expect you to have. And can I just say, okay, so because Janelle asked us about our upbringing. So the thing that I will say about growing up in the Caribbean and growing up in the way that we particularly grew up, is that we, unlike many Black people's experience in white majority countries, we grew up in a situation where excellence was expected and encouraged. And so that affects how we move through the world. And of course, it's really useful when you go into white majority spaces, because as we know, we have to be twice or three times as good. So coming out of a culture where you're expected to be excellent, and I think many Black people across the world have this, where, you know, their parents are going to say, you got to be twice as good. So, you know, make sure you're doing that homework, make sure you're going the extra mile. And so we were brought up in that kind of culture.
And we saw it all around us. I mean, you know, just to call attention to Sharon's virtual background, which she's using as a virtual background, but that is an actual room in her house.
Yes.
So that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about how we were brought up, about educational standards and excellence and what was expected of us. And also the blessing that we were able to, everybody, many parents and families have hopes and dreams and expectations, but aren't able to necessarily bring them to fruition. So we were very blessed in that, because of where and how we grew up. You know, this was just the norm for us. And we realized that obviously not, you know, again, we're not a monolith as a community. Not everybody has had the same opportunities. So we are very, very grateful for the ones that we had. And we're grateful. We are happy and proud to have been raised and educated in the Caribbean specifically.
Yes. And I want to just say for anybody out there that's listening, you know, being raised and educated in the Caribbean is not a lesser thing. In fact, because similarly to Black people, institutions like the University of the West Indies had to be twice as good in order to get the recognition. Right?
It's one of the top-rated universities in the world, actually.
It is. And so, you know, and I certainly found that when I went abroad, you know, when I compared the education I'd received with my peers from other countries, it stacked up. In many cases, it was better, right? And, you know, this was in my particular field. But then stepping back a bit, because like many Caribbean people, of course, we have one of these stories that takes us all over the world. So I was actually born in England, which is where my parents were living. And I think my dad was in education there when I was born.
Can I just say for a quick second,
Yeah.
The number of times I have told people my sister is British, and like they look at me with confusion because they can't conceive of a Black person having been born there.
Listen, even people in England can't always conceive of that.
Yeah.
Then they went to Jamaica, which is where Lisa came in. And then we lived in Trinidad. And then we lived in Barbados. And then after that, our paths kind of diverged. Lisa and I both lived in France for a year at different points. Then Lisa went to the States. I went to England. I'm now back in the Caribbean. So there's been this journey into different spaces and quite a lot of travel and quite a lot of, that makes us the people that we are. I think I wouldn't say that every place that we've ever lived has been an easy place to live, but I would say that it has, not at all, but I would say that it has contributed to giving us the perspective that we have on the issues that we talk and write about.
And would you say that the need to work twice as hard and be twice as good has followed you in each of those places? Or has your experience been different depending on the country you were in at the time?
I think.
Yeah, you go, then I'll go.
Okay, I think it depends on where you are. Okay, so for the last 15, 16 years, I've been a freelancer operating from Barbados, although I have to admit, I didn't always tell people where I was, right? Which it plays into that whole thing. Right. When I was in England, I definitely felt that I needed to be, on top of my game at all times, because people were always ready to look at this skin and assume that you were, as we say in the Caribbean, to less count you, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've always felt that need was there. Now, I don't know whether this was only my perception, but there were experiences where I would say that I was definitely treated differently on the basis of the color of my skin, whether that was in terms of getting a job or a promotion or an extra level of scrutiny or whatever. So I think that was definitely there. And then moving into my freelance career, I would say that there are times when I've received more pushback because of the color of my skin. Now, women get more pushback anyway, and Black women get even more pushback. I got to a certain point where I said, okay, I'm not taking that anymore. I've been doing this for X number of decades. I have the chops, I have the proof. You can choose to work with me at my budget, or you can choose not to, but I don't have to make myself small to fit your perception. Mm-hmm. So that's how I feel about it. What about you, sis?
I don't know if people still do that, but I'm doing it. So because like you, sis, I started out my career in Barbados, but again, first of all, Black majority, and like we both graduated from not only from one of the best top high schools there, but also, from the University of the West Indies, again, top rated in institution. And so when I started my career, excellence again was expected. Mm-hmm. So I never walked into any space thinking with anybody looking down on me and thinking, oh, this person can't do this job. Right. And it changes how you walk. It changes how you operate. It changes how you carry yourself. I didn't, of course, realize that until I moved away from it. Right. Mm-hmm. When I started working here, one of my first jobs was at Black Enterprise magazine. I think the universe was trying to ease me into it, because of course that was a Black majority space within a white majority world, right? So again, there I was given, projects and opportunities that, people just thought it was never a question of whether or not I could do it. It's, okay, are you available to do X, Y, Z? I think you'd be great at it, right? Once I left Black Enterprise, for the most part, it became an ongoing walk through sludge to prove myself day in, day out. Surprise, quote unquote, that English is my first language. Right. It is like, come on, guys. First of all, please study some geography and history. Get it together, right? But surprise, A, that English is my first language. Surprise, B, that, I'm so well spoken. You're so articulate. We've all heard that.
You got a master's?
Yeah.
Surprise. I remember a bunch of us were having a discussion at one of my jobs, and that was kind of the topic of conversation. I said, so when I got my master's, blah blah blah, whatever. Mm-hmm. And like everybody's head turned around.
Yes.
Like what horror movie is that? You know what I mean, right?
What school did you get it from? right?
Oh my gosh, then you have to keep on and keep on with your receipts, essentially, right? And so it's been a struggle. To this day, it is still a struggle. You know, I experienced something in a job where I gave a presentation, and the people to whom I was giving the presentation thanked the two white men who were not present
Oh my
and did
goodness.
not thank me. And I was like, okay, that takes work though. Like I'm like we're literally on here.
Yeah,
on
let me
screen.
jump in here because
Please.
sometimes ignorance is a choice, especially in the 21st century.
Mhm.
There really is no excuse for having those outdated notions about what the Caribbean is, what Black people are, what they're capable of. That is just white supremacist thinking. And while that exists, that exists in post-colonial societies as well. Let's not fool ourselves, right? It takes it, as Lisa says, it takes work to remain that ignorant.
It does. It's a choice.
It's a choice, and it's also a privilege, right? To
Mhm.
just operate through the world as if only your existence matters.
Yes. Just floating on through like some kind of toxic fairy, just oblivious to reality and oblivious to anybody else's reality, oblivious to anybody else's existence, and not caring, not having to give it any space in your brain.
And it's not
a privilege for sure.
It's not a luxury that Black people have.
No.
Right? We don't have the luxury of moving through the world oblivious.
No, we
right?
don't.
We don't.
No, since I was a child, my parents were also immigrants to Canada and instilled in me that I have to work twice as hard and you have to be twice as good as your white counterparts in order to achieve their level of success and surpass them in order to receive even the same opportunities.
Yes.
And
sometimes not even then.
Yeah, because even when you do, they will still look for, I remember a job that I had in England where I applied for what was a promotion. And then for some reason I got the job, but they decided that they weren't going to give me the full amount of the salary that went with it. They gave me half. And they made some ridiculous excuse. I mean, I took it, it was still more and I needed the money, but they made some ridiculous excuse. And what I find, and I don't know if you ladies have found this, is sometimes you go back, because we know more now. We're more aware of things. And you go back and you look back at some of those previous interactions and you say, hey, that's what was really going on there. That was white supremacy at work.
And here's the thing, though. There's a reason why, we call it nowadays, or they call it the pipeline problem, right? But which does not exist. But there's a reason why so many of us are the only. In some cases, I'm willing to say maybe in some cases it's a numbers game. Okay, fine. Statistically, in some areas, you might literally be fewer in number. But honestly, nowadays, you can find more than one Black person or person of color, right? But the thing is that they don't want us talking to each other. They don't want us building in their mind, right? Because they are still in the slave days, right?
Yes,
and they're thinking
that's
the
what I wanted to say.
going to run away.
Yes, that's what I wanted to say. It's the same strategy they used in enslavement. It's the same reason why they had that whole seasoning thing where they would put people with people that spoke different languages and force them to learn their broken English so that they could not communicate, so they could not rebel, so they could not change the status quo.
It's
and
a plan. It's work. It's work.
Oh my gosh, it's a plan. It's the structure.
Yeah.
That is part of the structure of structural racism.
How dare you assemble? What are you talking about in that kitchen? What are you sitting talking about?
Yeah.
Why are you
listen?
What are you plotting?
Yes.
Exactly. And it happens today, right? You're in workplaces. They see 2-3 Black people get together and all of a sudden the white people are threatened.
Absolutely.
Listen, I have had an experience.
You could be talking about, you could be in there talking about Oprah and hairstyles. They think you are plotting.
But you are plotting. Absolutely plotting. I mean, I definitely had a weird experience at, one job where, the every other community and ethnicity, everybody else was allowed to sit in groups.
Yes.
The Black people and people of color were not allowed to sit in groups. right? Now, of course, it was not in any handbook anywhere. It just was the way things were, right? And we weren't allowed to sit in groups. But I remember once, like talking to, there was like one other wonderful, black girl who was, joined the team, and they saw us talking one day, and thereafter, it was a good 2-3 weeks of absolute hell after that, because they were trying to like terrorize us because we were talking. And knowing us, we probably actually were talking about hair and makeup, but they felt threatened. They're like, oh, no. Master does not want the slaves building any kind of, there shall be no Harriet Tubmanism here going on, right?
We internalize the expectations of us, don't we? Right?
Mhm.
That we should behave in a certain way, and we begin to police and tone police ourselves and our own behavior to police, right?
Yeah, and what occurred to me as Lisa was talking is that is what is happening on LinkedIn. Possibly is that they are threatened by us, by Black LinkedIn and Caribbean LinkedIn starting to talk and build coalition, and that's why we keep getting shot down all the time. I don't know if it's a plot. I don't know if it's algorithmic, but I feel like I suspect.
There's algorithmic bias. Absolutely,
there is algorithmic bias. It feels like
because look. Myself, I think, all of us here, and there's John Cousins, if that's the way you pronounce his name. He just springs to mind because he's a screenshot expert, right?
Yeah.
And so all of us have our evidence and our receipts and our screenshots of cases where, these trolls have literally threatened us, literally cursed us out, used expletives towards us, bullied us, etc. And then you get back these weird messages from LinkedIn help saying, oh no, that's fine.
Yes.
Absolutely fine, no problem. Does not contravene our rules and regulations.
But let you only call out racism.
Let you listen, just use the word black too many times.
Oh yeah, it won't, your viewership will go all the way down.
Completely tank.
Yeah, you're raising the fact that we actually have to work twice as hard as content creators to get.
There you go again, twice as hard.
Every step of the way, there's so much more effort that we have to put in, and that's why so many of us are so exhausted. That's why self-care is important for everyone, right? So whoever is watching this, we're not saying self-care is only for Black people or brown people.
No.
But what we're saying is it is even more important for us because we're constantly under siege.
Yes.
We're under siege. We're dealing with so much more.
Yeah,
right?
I think as I said to somebody the other day, for us, we love our allies, we love our accomplices, we love all of y'all, but for us, we are not just working in it, we're living it.
Yes.
And so, that is twice the toll for us. I think.
So when there have been all of these court cases that have taken place, and every time there is another beautiful Black or brown human being that becomes a hashtag, right? Every time one of our sisters or brothers is murdered, every time we're waiting for a verdict, or we're wondering, okay, are the police in question going to be held accountable this time? Sort of collectively as a community, we're on an inhale. And the exhale, honestly, never fully really comes.
No,
so it doesn't, right?
There's
always a measure of tension.
And I just, the thing is, because, some people will say, they've even said to me, why do you care about this so much? You're there in Barbados, in Black majority Barbados. Why do you care? I said, but, this is the Black community. I literally have a sister living in the US. I have cousins. I have people that I care about living in these spaces. I have had the experience of living in these spaces myself. And I know to some extent what they go through. Right. I was speaking to someone yesterday, and I said the only difference for me is that I have not lived with the tension that you live in the States in terms of fearing death every time you step out your door, right?
Yeah.
Which just ratchets it up another notch. I know that when I visit the States, I feel a level of tension in certain spaces that is not present in the same way in other white majority spaces.
Mhm.
It's like, your dial goes up to 10 everywhere else and it goes up to 12 when you're in the US, right?
Yeah.
But I think that, there's so much audacity in that question, right? And it speaks to, just even the way that people presume if it doesn't affect you, you shouldn't be concerned, right? And it's almost how white people who do live in these spaces have been told to try to ignore the realities and the experiences of the Black people around them. And it should be impossible, particularly for us, no matter where we are in the diaspora. But I think it's really more important for people who are right there, right? Present, experiencing it firsthand. Like you said, we as human beings, we should care what's happening.
We should.
In different parts of the globe, and the experiences of Black people globally, I think, are similar, which is part of the reason why I wanted to highlight that through this conversation, right, through this series, right, that no matter where we are in the diaspora, we have this experience of having to work twice as hard, be twice as good, and just have the care and compassion for one another.
There's a lot that we have in common. And the majority of us outside the African continent have the history of enslavement in our past.
Right.
We have that generational trauma. We have the experience of existing in white majority spaces at some point in our lives. We have all of that going on. And so I think that there's a shared humanity, a shared experience that we all relate to. If somebody gets mowed down in the US, I feel it almost as if it were a member of my own family, It really, it gets me. When George Floyd was murdered, it must be a good month to recover from that. And not even recover, I wouldn't even use the word recover, just to stop feeling so beaten down by the whole thing, and this happens to a greater or lesser extent with, the trials and the this and the other, all the incidents that happen. Right. And I'm sure you feel the same way, Lisa.
Oh, yeah. And you too, Janelle.
Yeah, I don't expect the best in any of these situations, right? In the Kyle Rittenhouse case, or, in none of these cases do I expect a positive outcome, right?
No.
When what we expect happens, which is nothing, no accountability. We just continue on, right?
Yeah.
Because we've become accustomed to this
trauma,
right?
Because swimming, let me tell you, we are just literally soaking, marinating in trauma daily. And there are times where we're able to distance ourselves from it, or even maybe we're all like collectively dissociating. I don't know, right? There are times where we can handle it better than others. But the fact is that whether we choose to, deal with it, give it more of our time or not, the trauma is there because the experiences are there, right? And as I think you both said, it is collective. It is communal.
How does that trauma, I guess, follow us into the workplace, and how should our employers then treat us in light of the fact that we're walking through our life with theories that we've arrived after working twice as hard to get there, and now we're bringing this trauma with us? What would you say?
Ooh, well, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was going to say, the other day, I and millions of us around the globe had that kind of experience where, we're waiting on the outcomes of these trials and so on. And like I mentioned before, the collective inhale, and you have to go to work and nobody else cares.
Nobody cares.
They do not mention it. They do not bring it up. They can Slack you and email you about everything else except for what is going on in this world that is potentially affecting your community and therefore you. And so, like you said, you have to have your armor on. And I think I'm hoping that more companies will collaborate with people like yourself, right? For example, right? And learn that, really put their platitudes into action, right? Take the black squares off of Instagram and actually develop and implement.
Care about the Black people in your organization.
Care about them beyond making statements,
Yeah.
right? We need actions. We need and quantifiable plans. Okay, here's our strategy. Here's what we're planning. Okay, 3 months in, 6 months in, a year later, where are we? Right? How
Yes.
are we tracking against
Measure.
what we want to accomplish? Right.
Measure, quantify, measure, track. Because the current situation for many companies, I mean, there have been a few exceptions, but many companies seems to be, Black people are not exempt from having to continue to be twice as good, even under severe trauma of this type. You can't turn up at work and talk about it and so on. Now, the place that I work part-time is an exception to that, actually, which I'm very grateful for.
Mhm.
They have a very strong anti-racism policy, and they know that these things are important, and we talk about them. But for the most part, I think that Black people in the workplace suffer even more, because not only are they traumatized, but they can't talk about it. They can't, and they get very little understanding or support. And I think, as Lisa said, what's needed is to do something that's not performative. I did see one example, and I can't remember which company it was, of a CEO who says, listen, I know you're all under stress. Feel free to take the day off. If you need more time off, you want somebody to talk to, we're there. We're creating space for that. But I think that's the exception rather than the rule.
That is definitely the exception.
And it needs to be the rule.
Yeah, I haven't seen that anywhere that I've worked in any organizations that I've counseled lately. They're not willing to go that extra mile, and I think that that's highly problematic in this environment where we've seen Black Lives Matter, anti-Asian hate, Islamophobia. Racism is absolutely on the rise. Anti-Semitism, it's on the rise, and these experiences of racialized people are happening more and more and more and more, and there needs to be opportunities for us to release that pent-up trauma, quite frankly.
Sorry, go ahead, sis.
No, I was going to say, well, one of the ways that I do that is through my newsletter, which it started with an essay, which was after George Floyd's murder. I wrote, "I'm tired of racism." And then I realized that all this stuff that I'd been holding in for several decades needed to come out. And I started writing about it and sharing about it. And eventually that led to the newsletter. And, a lot of what I share is, experiences that I personally have had, or I know friends have had in the workplace, in life, walking around in white majority spaces, things that we have thought about, things that we discuss with our girlfriends in safe spaces. And, I just want people to be aware of this stuff, and for the people that say that they want to work, to fight racism, to be aware that this is what is happening with us. This is what we go through. Here are the things that you can actually do to support us,
Anti-racism newsletter is such a fantastic resource. I highly recommend everybody watching this video go and subscribe to this channel, but subscribe to the newsletter, and don't just subscribe to it, support it with your dollars. I think it's phenomenal, and I think it does help. It helps me, right? And every single individual that I refer to it, right? I go into organizations, and at the end of the day, I'm quoting information from the newsletter, articles that you've written, and then I tell them everybody to go in and subscribe as well, because I think organizations definitely need that awareness of what can they do, what actions can they take to combat racism.
Here's a question for you in the work that you've been doing. Okay, so I recently had an interview with someone interviewed me, and they asked about the learning journey. And I said, I'm going to push back because we've been learning.
Yes.
Or rather, y'all have been learning, right? And so is there a point at which we can, when do we get to move beyond the learning with the understanding, of course, every organization is at a different point in their evolution and so on. But in general, when do we get to move beyond the learning and reflecting?
And to the doing, to the action.
I think, we're way past the doing, right? Since George Floyd, it should have been immediately, what can I do? How can I help? How can I contribute? Taking specific actions to combat and eradicate racism. And I think, it was recently raised by Dana Brownlee in the Forbes article, just around the performative progressives, right? They're progressive, but yet they're still on a learning journey, and they're actually doing things to counteract or combat or be barriers to the work getting actually done and accomplished. And I think for me, learning is continual. It should never end, right?
Agreed. Sure. Yeah.
Agreed.
You constantly,
but it's not an alternative to action, though, is it?
And thank you for adding that nuance, because that's important. I don't ever want it to come across as if I'm saying there's an end point to learning, because that's definitely not where I'm coming from at all. Learning is definitely continual, whatever the right word is. You see there, learning. Learn your grammar, Lisa, but learn your vocabulary. But yeah, learning is ongoing. So that definitely has to continue taking place. But at the same time,
reflection to action.
Yeah, that's why you have the class, you have the exam, and then you have real life, right? And so I feel like we're all just staying in, certain communities are staying in class. They don't want the exam, and they don't want to move into the practical side where it's real world application.
Yes, a few people have taken the exam, but they still haven't gone out into real life.
So Kane, another LinkedIn personality who will also be on this show, she would say, sit with yourself. And then I would say,
oh yes.
But then go do something afterwards, right? Don't just and be in this kind of eternal, perpetual state of reflection. You must do something after you've reflected and you've learned.
Yes.
This is something that I want to do now. I run a monthly allies group for Omnis Education. And so, Lisa's been to talk to them a couple of times, and a couple other people. And so one of the very important things that we do at the start of the meeting, I said, so what have you done in the last month? And what are you committing to do in the next month? And I really want to, as we move into 2022, ramp that up a little bit, so that, we're not just reading and learning. Reading and learning is very important, crucial. Especially when you're coming from, a base where you weren't fully aware of it. But how can we get to the point where you're altering something in your own behavior, or you're making change in your environment? And that's kind of
the advice
what we need to get.
Is people have to begin to take risk, right?
Yes. And responsibility.
And it's uncomfortable. You have to be able to deal with the discomfort and try. Make an effort, make an attempt. You might fail. Don't give up. Be resilient. Try again, right? And I think that's what it comes down to.
And putting myself in their shoes, right? I can honestly if you have spent your life being able to do the bare minimum and being told that is okay. You can do the bare minimum, and guess what? Your daddy, your uncle, your mommy, whatever, they're still going to hook you up with that job. Or, we're going to come and create a fuss and get you a grade that you didn't earn. Right? Et cetera, because it starts from then with the thinking that it's okay to do the bare minimum. It's okay to skate by. It's okay not to put in any effort and still prosper.
Yes. And meanwhile,
who would want to change that?
Well, I'm telling my son, like my parents told me, that he also has to work twice as hard. And that notion, and that, the fact that I'm passing that down as well, it has to stop, right?
I don't know because I have also said my daughter, because that is the reality. The reality is that white privilege gives you the skating bypass. Black skin does not. And much as we know that's wrong and we want to change that, as parents, right? As aunties, as uncles, as significant people within the lives of our young people, we want to equip them to thrive and survive.
Yeah.
Or I said, no, to not just survive, but to thrive.
To thrive, yes.
And therefore, that means giving them that lesson. And we will have to keep telling them that until it is no longer the case. There are certain things that, I still remember when we were in Target. My daughter was 7. She was in the toy section at one end of the aisle. I was at the other. She picked up something to bring it and show me. I saw a security guard watching her. I went to meet her, walked back. We put it back on the shelf and I said, okay, next time, come and get me to look at what you want to show me. Because these people are going to think that you are trying to steal. I said, when you walk through the aisles, do not put your hands in your bag, etc. So we're familiar with all the things. We're familiar with all the things. She was 7, right? But being seven would not stop that guard from hauling her away.
Yes. And I'm glad that you mentioned her age, because this thing that's going around now where we don't want, the young white children to have to learn about these things. It's like, what are you talking about? We from barely out of the womb, we have to basically indoctrinate our children with survival techniques just for getting through the world. Just like Target, you should be able to go to Target, right? And just have fun and go and buy, $300 more worth of stuff than you plan to, right?
Yeah, but the reality is that the little white kid can take a doll off the shelf and run all around that shop and nobody would raise an eyebrow. Let her just turn the corner of that aisle, my daughter. Yeah. And the guard would be on her like, what was the phrase? I don't even know what the phrase is.
Yeah, would be on her. I think like white on rice is the phrase, but I don't know if you want to use that one.
I don't know if that's the phrase I want to use, but yes.
That might be inappropriate.
It really might.
Apologies.
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think about me, with my son, I tell him, make sure you get a receipt.
Right? Yes.
Yes.
Get a receipt so that you can demonstrate that.
And keep it handy.
Right.
Yes. And depending on the store, there are different levels of stores, but depending on the store, I walk out with the receipt held up in my hand, sort of casually but ostentatiously.
Yeah. Especially these days, because with being environmentally conscious, you're not getting bags.
Yes.
Right. So you have to have that receipt in your hand. I hold that receipt until I make it through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the other thing you teach your children is, if you get there and the alarm goes off, do not leave that store.
Well, yes, there's a store. There's a store that me and my beloved niece, we laugh about it now, but for some reason, every time we go in, we don't know what it is. Every time we're leaving, the alarm goes off and we both stare at each other in panic because, we know we've done nothing wrong, but we also know that we're Black, right? We don't know how it's going to turn out. And it's just it is so tragic, actually, that you constantly have a program running underneath the main program, right?
Yes, and I want to say that Janelle was talking earlier about having to be twice as good, but it's also twice as vigilant.
Woo!
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. There's so much stuff that we cannot take for granted existing in this skin, especially in white majority spaces.
Let me tell you an experience I had, which was so funny. Now, I've been living, in this apartment for, I don't know, probably like 10 years, a long time, right? And once I was walking my dog, came back to the front door, right? Obviously, my dog on a leash, keys in my hand, and a white gentleman who was there kind of like gave me this look and was almost like starting to try to bar me from coming in. And I gave him a look back and he said, "Do you belong here?" And I'm like, "Do you belong here?" I'm like, "'Cause I live here." I'm like, "Do you see me and my dog?" And, but like, it's like constant vigilance, constantly being questioned and asked. And this was somebody who, he was I don't know, he might have come to do work on the other apartment. I have no idea, right? It's not somebody that lived here, right? He came for a couple of hours and thought he had more right to be here than me and to question me.
Wow.
And
then
that is a microcosm of the macro matrix that we're living in.
Absolutely.
yes, and then there's the way that Black women in particular can be seen as very available, shall we just say, right? I have had a couple of experiences with that. I had an experience in France where somebody curb crawled me, just drove his car along behind me, trying to persuade me to get in the car because he assumed that I was available.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what the rating is on this program, so I'm going to keep it clean.
That's real. It happened to me on my way into work. I literally went I think to get a coffee on a lunch break, and during my lunch hour was going back into the office in a busy, populated city, just crossing the road, and got, propositioned, to come into the car. So,
That's horrible.
Professional.
That's horrible.
What is this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand any of I don't understand any of it. I've had similar experiences. One experience I had that freaked me out. I'm a big Black hair advocate, shall we say, right? Especially on the topic of do not touch our hair.
Mhm.
And so it was like at the end of a work day, I was walking home. I had recently got, I guess I was feeling myself. I don't know if I was like walking with any particular swag. Maybe I was. But all of a sudden I felt a presence like uncomfortably close behind me. It was in New York. So there's always like a crutch of people anyway. So, if you can feel that, the person has to be basically like right there. Right. So I felt that. And then I felt like a tugging on my hair. Right. And then a man, I was going to say a gentleman, but clearly not. Then this guy, of course I jumped out of my skin. I was terrified, right? And startled. And I looked around at him, clutched my pearls and, was like, what are you doing? And he said, he was like, I really like your hair.
Oh no, he didn't.
That does not give you the right to, first of all, to breach the unspoken personal space boundary, right? And definitely not to reach out your hands and touch my hair. But there's this feeling, again, back to slavery, right? They feel that they own you. They feel that it's like a constant slave market, and they can literally come and inspect the merchandise whenever they want to and however they want to. Right?
So ingrained.
People are not going to like to hear that, but that is the truth, and that is where it comes from.
Yes, stop it.
The truth you can
That's
always
all.
on this show. I want to talk about the ways in which working twice as hard has actually served us in our lives. I know it's been a challenge at times. We've had to overcome so much, but how has it helped us, and particularly advance in the workplace?
Okay, it helps us because we excel. I have been in in certain workplaces where people realize, even if they don't always admit it, that the Black and brown people are the ones that are really bringing it. Right? You may not always get the credit, but they know that you can do the work. You actually end up sometimes end up being overburdened because they know that you can deliver, right? But it does, in terms of your own personal growth and development, I'm sure it is very helpful in terms of the number of things that you might choose to take on and go for. And because, we're always seeking to elevate ourselves because we know that we have to have this extra burden of proof. Right. So, we'll do a little extra qualification here, do a little course there, volunteer for this little thing. And so it adds to the sum of our knowledge and experience. So I think in that way, it does help us to develop. We do have to be careful not to burn out while we're doing it, however.
I know personally, I've taken on way too much volunteerism and work responsibilities and everything pro bono and paid, and there's a lot going on, and I'm sure there's a lot going on with both of you as well.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned pro bono versus paid, because Madison Butler, which I think we all know, started the Black Speakers Collection, right?
Yes.
And let me tell you, I I was one of the first people, I'm sure we all were, to sign up for that. And apart from the community aspect of it, I really love that it's about getting Black people, and especially, of course, Black women paid, and paid equitably, paid fairly, paid promptly. And so I'm a big fan of that. And the reason why, I mean, within a couple of days, I mean, I don't know where the numbers are at now, but definitely it was like in the hundreds, like over 500 within a couple of days.
600.
Yeah, you know.
And can I just shout out
Mhm.
David McQueen?
Oh, yeah.
Because
he started it.
a few months ago, he said, "Where my Black speakers at? I better not be charging less than $2,000."
Yes. He did that.
Our Black in our Caribbean community, is that one of the hardest things is to figure out, what should I be charging for this?
Yes.
And he just put that information out there. And I said, okay, I've been meaning to start speaking. I'm going to go and put that price right on my website. I don't know if anybody's going to hire me, but I'm going to put it out there to the universe and just wait for those opportunities to come, because I will tell you, they come.
Yeah, they do. And getting back to your question, Janelle, right? This ties back into, how does having to work twice as hard prepare us? We're already prepared.
Yeah.
Right? Even, and this is not to say, I mean, public speaking is an art. There's an art and a science to it. So I'm not trying to take away from people who do this all day, every day. However, that being said, I probably the least prepared Black speaker is probably way ahead. You see what I'm saying? Because again, you have to, you have to work twice as hard. You have to prepare twice as much. You have to do twice as much research.
Let me interrupt you there.
Put so much more into it. So you're already ready.
Yeah, let me interrupt you there to say, I was talking about this allies group, and I asked Lisa to come and speak about something I knew she knew about. And she's there saying, oh, well, I don't know if it's okay. It's all okay. I will tell you, 6 months later, the people who attended that session are still talking about it. They're still talking about things she brought up and sensitized them to, because she did such an excellent job. And, so to her point, the fact that that you have to be twice as good, you give that extra level of preparation. And so you deliver excellence.
Yeah. And can I just say, I don't know if it's a Black community thing, if it's a Caribbean thing, a combination, but there's a big heaping serving of do not embarrass your family. Let's just keep it real. Right? Listen,
that's a Caribbean thing.
I am notoriously, I think I have dyscalculia, right? Me and math and numbers just do not coincide at all, right? And so it was to the point where my math teachers, I mean, they're like, we love you, but we're not expecting great things in this particular thing. We've been working with you for X number of years. And just the thought of this, I don't know how I passed that exam for my O levels. To this day, I don't know how I passed it. But I had a talk with myself, right? And I was like, you do something on exam day, because you cannot fail this exam and embarrass your family. But we bring this into it, that carries forward through life.
I laugh so hard because I literally said that to my son this morning. He's going on a field trip to the movie theater.
Yes.
To watch the new movie. I forget the name. Encanto.
Right.
Class. And for some strange reason, the teacher said to him and to the class that they could wear their pajamas to the movie theater. They're going off-site to the movies in their pajamas. And I thought, not my child.
No.
You're going to ruin this, and I hate you. And I said, let me tell you something. You can wear your pajama top, but you see the bottom, you're going to have on some normal pants. If you want to put on your little funky robe over top and your winter coat, I don't care, but you're going to have on pants. I don't care. You're not embarrassed.
Real pants.
Yeah, real pants. You're not going to embarrass me in the road. So when people say, you saw Janelle's son at the movie that you're in pajamas, I don't care what your teachers have to say to you. I'm your mother, and you're going to dress up.
Yes. Don't go any people down road. Don't go any people down road embarrassing me.
No.
No black children could go out and do that kind
No,
of
no,
thing.
no,
man.
no, no, no.
That's exactly
Nope.
it. Don't you
Not gonna, because it's a real thing. And even though, we're laughing about it, but it does, the number of things that I have done and just done and some accomplished just based on that alone. Like, okay, yes, I remember once I had to do, it's when I was working in hotel marketing, and my territory was the UK and LATAM. And so I had studied languages at university. Long story short, I had to do a presentation in Spanish. My Spanish was still fresh enough that I knew I could do it, but I knew I needed work. I wasn't like, and let me tell you, I was like, well, first of all, you're not going to embarrass your family. And you are not going to embarrass your hotel management that told the people that you can make this presentation. You best believe I stayed up all night. I traveled with like that, that huge brick of a Spanish right? I traveled with that dictionary.
Yeah.
I was probably like 10, 15 pounds of my luggage weight right there. And I stayed up that night, right? And I just made sure. And let me tell you, by the time I was done with that presentation, the people were asking me questions in rapid Spanish, right? At the end of it, because they thought I was fully fluent, but which I was very glad for. And I had to tell them, no.
I didn't know that story because I had to do interviews in Spanish and I did similar levels of preparation.
Yes.
And you just, you got to bring it.
You have to bring it. And even stuff like it's not quite the workplace, but just speaking to the topic of preparation, way back in the day, I used to do pageants and that sort of stuff, and of course my first I was a very casual kind of girl. I don't even exactly remember how I got into it. I think somebody said, hey, go and do this, and I was like, okay, no problem, right? But those things, like anything in life, it takes practice. Right? I'm accustomed, like, just, running about barefoot, with flat sandals, whatever. And so, you have to learn how to carry yourself. You have to learn how to walk in those ridiculous high heels. You have to, so I spent many an evening practicing the walk, practicing, my speech, practicing all of that, because again, you have to show up and show out in the best way. You have to give up your best always, but it serves you when it's time, when it's go time. When it's go time, when it's showtime, you have to be up, you have to perform. And so I want to hear from each of you, I guess, what's next on the horizon? What's go time for you looking like right these days? I know you both have very, very busy lives and lots going on. You're working twice as hard as everyone else, but what do you have on your agendas now?
Okay. Lisa and I have just wrapped season 3 of our podcast.
Awesome. The Introvert Sisters, everybody.
The Introvert Sisters, yes. 61 episodes. Can you believe it? We launched it last year. We've done 61 episodes. We're very proud of ourselves, I have to say. And so one of the things that's on the horizon for both of us is planning season 4, where we hope to have a couple more guests. And, we have some ideas about things that we want to do. Less video, more guests, right? I am continuing to work on my newsletter. I have a couple of ideas about additional content. Speaking of working twice as hard, I realize that's going to have a time element to it. So I haven't quite worked out what that's going to be, but I have this idea about adding an occasional audio element for my paid subscribers, but I haven't quite worked that out yet. I am working on a book.
Very nice.
Well, actually, I'm working on 2 books.
You're working on 2. I was just going to say, you're working on 2 books.
Okay, one book is a collection of some of the essays from the first year of the newsletter, right? And the second book is an update to exploring shadism. And, so the first book is at a slightly more advanced stage. And the second book is at the stage where I'm just designing a new questionnaire so that I can redo the research. So that book may not even come out in 2022, but you never know, it might. Oh yeah, and what's the other thing? I recently became head of diversity, equity, and belonging for Omnis Education part-time. So it's a startup. So, we're building everything from the ground up. So I'm just doing some work in that. That's ever evolving as happens with startups. I would probably be, coming to pick everybody's brains and find out what I need to know. So yeah, that's me. What about you, sis?
Well, I feel like a slacker now. I'm just trying to survive. No, okay. I'm planning to be doing some more speaking, as we discussed earlier in the show. So that is on the horizon. I was going through some of my old to-do lists. And as I like to do every now and then, like something gets lost, right? You're like, oh my gosh, what happened to this? And I realized that I had written, one of my to-dos was to write a poetry chapbook.
Oh wow!
And yeah, because I'm actually I really started out as a poet and songwriter, and I've always just been in the world of words. So I want to revisit that. I don't know if 2022 is the year, but I have it. It's in my sights, and it is now reprioritized. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. I started working as a contributing writer for No White Saviors. Yeah, and so I want to just do more with them, right? I haven't been able to do as much as I would like, and so again, reprioritizing that and sort of planning out a series to do with them. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I have been such a fan of that account. I'm sure we all are, and so it's an honor to be able to contribute, right?
That's it.
Then I also recently started as editor at large of Linked Inclusion, which is it's not I know it sounds similar, but it's actually not affiliated with LinkedIn at all. It is a Black owned, Black founded social media platform. And the name, yes. And the name says it all, right? For all of it's sort of to counteract all of the exclusion and discrimination that we experience on certain other platforms, right? So it's supposed to be a safe space. So I'm going to be contributing there, whether it is writing or in other ways as well. And so I'm really, really excited about that, because it's giving me a chance to sort of expand my portfolio. I've done a lot of anti-racism writing specifically, but definitely delving more into DEI, right? And wellness. Wellness is part of what Linked Inclusion is offering that's a little bit different. The focus on which we spoke about ourselves, right? The importance of prioritizing self-care, mental health, and so on and so forth. So I'm excited about that. And beyond that, we shall see.
Fantastic. It's been really, really great highlighting the both of you, the Introvert Sisters. I've been a longtime fan, watching your podcast, reading your blog posts, reading your articles, your newsletter, subscribing, trying to get shadism, trying to, get the world of the Hurley sisters. So I'm really, really happy that you were on my show, that you agreed to do this with me. It was just lovely meeting you both. And I want everyone out there to just don't forget to click like and share and subscribe to the channel. You're going to see a lot more throughout the series. And thank you both for being with me today.
Thank you so much. I mean, we are fangirling. I am fangirling. Thank you. We got connected a while back on LinkedIn, and the connection is a genuine one. So it's great to be able to actually meet each other, collaborate. And so thank you so much for having us.
I look forward
I second everything that Lisa has said. I am a big fan of yours, Janelle. I have really enjoyed particularly some of the content that you've been sharing on all things equitable. And I am really delighted to be part of your new series, and will be continuing to follow you. And thank you so much for the invitation. This has been a real joy and pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.